when you're in a therapeutic relationship, what you really want, that therapist is a vehicle for that patient to get better, right? And so you have to be as much of a blank slate as possible. So also to listen for your readers out there, if you know more about your therapist's lives than they know about yours, find a new therapist, all right? That's not a blank slate, right? That's either a bullshit session or they should be paying you or something. But so to be that blank slate and to be that vehicle for them, they are going to have to at some point transfer some of their pain and anguish. Let's just, for an analogy, they have problems with their father or father figures. Eventually, they are going to act or say things where you might be the object of that conflict, right? The countertransference is the bad, is kind of what you are mentioning in some struggles, and it's very, very common, man. But it's then to act on that transference, right? And this is actually where, like, psychiatry in general, or mental health people in general, sometimes if that transference is love or erotic kind of thing, countertransference is you act on that and you forget about doctor-patient relationship, which is a complete ethical no-no, right? And illegal. So, but in that sense, countertransference doesn't have to be that, overt, right? It could simply be that you're bringing an emotion into that relationship, right? That is going to be destructive. It's going to create conflict. And you have now given over to the witch's brew instead of being able to sit back, have them throw all the eyes of newt into the brew, right? And you're being able to kind of let them stir it themselves, and they can drink it themselves too, but you don't jump in.
Bro, how you been, man? It's good to see you, bro.
See you.
The big dog, man. The big cheese. This is great. I think I'm super stoked, man. Thanks for taking the time, brother.
Yeah, when are you not stoked? That's actually what should be the...
That's a good question. That's a great question, man. So, Super Chuck, man. So, can you just share? So, how did you, when okay, so boom, child, you're a kid where you were like, hey, I'm going to go to West Point. I want to be a doctor. Like, let's start with that trajectory, if you don't mind. Like, even in childhood,
Wow,
kind of.
It's really going back there, man.
It's going way back.
Half a century. Okay. Yes, when a man and woman really love each other, and then yeah, I mean, I thought I was going to be a scientist, and so that's kind of what I wanted to be when I was growing up. I went to a Christian school, played a lot of soccer, martial arts, and Dungeons and Dragons, and so that was kind of a pseudo geek athlete, right? But for the most part, yeah, I didn't really know about West Point until I went into the Army, until I enlisted.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And then that's where, kind of even in that EQ kind of sense, that mentorship, that, sage kind of person is an 88 grad, actually, Michael Barger, he was my LT. And he saw something in me that I did not see. And, it's like, you should be an officer. It's like, no, officers suck. I had drank the Kool-Aid, right? I was enlisted.
That's right. Now, did you come from a military family? What did your folks do? Did you have siblings?
Yeah. My dad. So it's the whole California thing. Parents are divorced, right? The family tree's a hedge, and so we, my biological dad, he was in the Army as a dental assistant, and then the guy who raised me, my stepdad, he was a Marine. He was a tanker.
Got it. Okay. And were you close with him and your mom, or not?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
much?
I mean, it was a little bit rough. He was German, so he was very, very, very strict, right? But yeah, I mean, he kind of gave me, a little bit more of that military, and definitely pushed stoicism, right? Stoicism was a a major feature in our family. And I think that as we kind of develop, right? I mean, it's good to be stoic in some sense. Stoicism is not without emotions. It's probably the jump start to EQ for dummies, right? Because it's mostly like control and manage. Don't let other people manage your emotions, right? And so that's to me, that was always a prevailing thought through my thoughts.
Yeah, got it. Okay. So so then boom, you got an 88 grad who sees some things in you and says, "Hey man, you should be an officer." So you went to West Point, and what did you study at West Point?
So I did the CS, computer science engineering track. It was newer, right there. And we call it life science, but it's really pre-med,
Okay.
and then management too. So I kind of, my my junior year was packed.
Yeah,
Packed.
yeah.
I had really no time. I just was swallowing too much, but I did well. So
Yeah. Now, were you a Star Wreath geek?
no, I was a wreath guy. So
Oh,
I
you're an
missed the
animal.
star by, I don't know, just it's like decimal points. Yeah.
Wow.
And it
That's
was the cow year that screwed me up because I just took so much, right? And I missed it by a few things, but I got the wreath. So
Yeah, wow, that's great, dude. I always tell people that I graduated at the top, bottom third of my class.
yeah.
So I was never in danger of getting a star or a wreath.
Well, I like the wreath a little bit more. I mean, the star wreath is badass, right? But the wreath, I mean, in the sense is like, okay, I'm balanced, right? I mean, I kind
Right.
of liked that kind of balance because I probably could have got the star if I gave up judo, if I stopped doing, as much of the extracurricular stuff, right?
Yeah. And so for those of y'all that are listening to the podcast that are not familiar with West Point, that's the Hudson Valley Home for Wayward Children. And so that's United States Military Academy. And they have a couple, uh, they have a couple incentives that they give to cadets that are high performers. So academically, if you get above, I don't know, 3.5 or something, you get a star. You get to put a little star on your chest, and then if you are balanced or have like a maintain like a 3.0 or something like that, 3.4, and you're great athletically and everything, then you get a wreath. And so then there are some that the unicorns that got the star and the wreath, and then there were the normal guys like me that again got neither of
I
those.
can't remember. But I think it was like a 3.75 or higher was the star. And because I
Oh,
think
was it? Okay.
I easily had a 3.5.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I did get a C in philosophy.
Oh, nice. Wow. There you go.
Yeah, my
Okay.
only C. My only C at West
Wow,
Point
are you
in
kidding me?
philosophy.
Oh my gosh, dude. I got so many fantastics and dynamics. It's unbelievable, bro. Oh man, that's a riot. That's great. That's incredible. That's awesome. Okay. So then once you graduated from West Point, then where'd you
So
go?
I did well enough to get medical service corps. So there were 5 spots for guys, right? And so I went medical service corps, but I knew I didn't want to go to med school. I did well at West Point, but this is also, another part of EQ, right? Know thyself, right? It's that self-awareness. Wow, I did well, but it took a toll. And I was like, some people want to go right to med school right afterwards. I was like, oh no, timeout. I kind of miss being a soldier and I need to take a knee. And so it's like, well, let me get into that field. So I did medical service corps and went to the 101st.
Oh wow. Okay. So let me just real quick back on the know thyself comment there, which is definitely an aspect of emotional intelligence. How, when did you start developing self-awareness? When did you start
So
developing, and how?
well, I mean, they kind of say, so, we didn't tell any of the viewers and stuff, but I'm a psychiatrist, right? So, um, but in general, you kind of wonder, it's like, yes, you got to go through all these accolades and 12 extra years of training after high school to be a psychiatrist, right? But you kind of wonder if that's just the gauntlet to go. I mean, I was already kind of like the guy who listened to people, who took care of people. So, I mean, I kind of had that kind of if I got into fights, it was bullies, right? Other people that were oppressing other people or being mean to them, right? So it's kind of had at least the the archetype, if you really kind of
Mhm.
like a Jungian archetype, like a hero trying to go and rescue things and stuff. So in that sense, I was, I think, aware that that's kind of my predilection, right? And then you just kind of whittle away, especially as soon as you make mistakes, right? You make some mistakes, and then you're like, wait a second, that why did that? And so I would do a lot more of the AAR, the after actions reviews of, okay, that didn't go like I planned, right?
Right.
Why? And then I would be thinking about, because the other part of the EQ is the social dynamics, right? And so understanding the lay of the land and kind of the hierarchy kind of aspects, but not more than hierarchy, because that's not the same in school, right? I mean, there's a little bit of hierarchy, but you see the Jungian kind of Carl Jung kind of archetypes play out with everybody, right? And I didn't know what those were at the time, but I definitely, as you kind of piece things together, or maybe it was Dungeons and Dragons, I started to see, well, this one's the wizard, that's the thief, right? Oh, this one's a paladin, and this one's chaotic evil. Like, maybe it was Dungeons and Dragons that kind of helped me start to, compartmentalize people into their archetypes.
That's fascinating. I have never, made that connection before that something like that would help that. But that totally would make sense. Now, and when did you start playing D&D?
I was actually, I think it was 7 or 8. It was like the first, like, yeah, it was like my cousin introduced me. It was the first set ever, right, in the box and everything, and then I became like dungeon master, right? And so I actually then would look at everybody and try to understand what their motivations were, so I can make sure that they had fun and make something challenging for them, but still make it so it would have a little bit of chance, a little bit of fun, a little bit of goofiness, right? But also kind of meet their needs in that sense.
Well, that's totally developing your social awareness. I
Yeah.
mean, just asking yourself, okay, how can I construct this game such that it maximizes fun? That's a total
For the
social.
individuals and for the group. And so so I guess, being the DM was the first part of leadership and EQ, right? In the sense of, but then the archetypes too. It's like, okay, so this is a little bit of a psych aspect. You know what ego dystonic and ego syntonic is?
No.
So ego dystonic is dis is against, right? So if you say that you're one thing, but your actions do something else, subconsciously and consciously, but definitely subconsciously, you know that there is a fracture that is ego dystonic.
Interesting.
And so the more things that you do like that, it layers and layers more and more conflict. So
Wow.
things that are ego syntonic, that are, this is who I say I am, this is my actions, and I'm following through with that. And it's both reinforced in a conscious way and external, right? Like if you had friends, they would call you on your BS, right? They would say, basically, you said you're good, but you just did a blue falcon on me right over here. So so in that sense, even in the playing Dungeons and Dragons, if somebody really wanted something, but everything they were doing was completely inconsistent, I would see that and try to either get them back on track or fulfill that unconscious or subconscious kind of thing.
Wow. Fascinating. Okay, so man, that is so fascinating. So let me see. I'm gonna give you a little back brief here to see if I'm tracking like a muddy cat to a house. So ego, so if I'm understanding you correctly, ego systonic is when somebody is being
Syntonic.
what is it?
Ego syntonic. Syn is just with. It's just
Ego
Latin for with.
syntonic.
S
Okay.
S-Y-N, I think. Yeah, S-Y-N.
Okay. And then ego dystonic.
Dystonic, yes.
Okay.
Ego, that sense of self, who you are, and then tonic is more of an action, right? So when something is, myoclonic or muscle tension, muscle tone, so it's more actionish. Sorry. So go
Got
ahead.
it. No, that's good. This is good. So ego syntonic is for in my head how I kind of put that in my brain is that's somebody who is uh more authentic. They're living with authenticity. Their actions and their words and their values are all aligned like a spinal column. But someone that's living ego dystonically is living out of character. With that some the actions or and words and values are not congruent with each other. So what you're saying is that creates internal conflict, which I guess can even lead to external conflict as
And
well.
external, because, and think about the EQ. I mean, we're not, EQ is not just the individual, it's the other people and it's the connections. They're going to see that these things are not aligned, you know? And so you're going to have both an internal and external reinforcement to say that there is conflict and you should resolve that.
Yeah, sure. No.
Resolve it or accept it. And then, sometimes we create the world we think we deserve.
Ooh. Ooh. Well, that's self-fulfilling prophecy, right? That concept basically, right? Um I mean that's 100% what I did with my so not to skip but to skip a little bit. So most of my life I had self-sabotage, self-hatred, self-condemnation, insecurity, imposter syndrome, right? And so you know kind of it was so fascinating. So as I would get more successful in business, I would find myself self-sabotaging because, well, I'm not worthy to be successful, so I need to self-sabotage. But I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't conscious even that I was doing all this, but I would do all these little behaviors that would sabotage because, well, man, I can't reach like this level of success, okay, but man, I'm definitely not worthy for of this level of success. So I would to your point there, I would create the life that I thought I deserved. Um,
Yeah.
and so okay, so that's fascinating that you were making some of these connections with, now obviously you didn't have the verbiage of emotional intelligence stuff like that as a 7 or 8 year old, but you were essentially beginning very intentionally developing what is called your emotional intelligence at 7 or 8, playing a game, dude. That's fascinating.
Don't we all play a game and learn? I mean, we learn on the soccer field, the baseball, the football field, right? I mean, we do learn it in there. It's just, soccer is sometimes, or at least a sport, right? It's very easy to, here's the points, this is what I'm supposed to do, and it definitely unifies people into a very singular mission, right? The fields of friendly strife, as MacArthur, right? But the other portion, when you kind of add the D&D, well, everything's in your mind. This is why I've actually got my kids to play a little bit too. The video games totally forget about this. They go back into the singular mission, level up, destroy, get to the accomplishment without the connection. And yeah, there might be a little bit of co-op games, but it's almost like playing soccer.
Mm,
Where do they get to learn that emotional intelligence? And they don't get to do it talking smack over a microphone.
right, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, that's a great point because, like, I'm just thinking of jujitsu, right? You with jujitsu, you get immediate feedback on right on what works, what doesn't work. Martial arts, right, provides that immediate feedback that and jujitsu, or judo. We've got an Olympic judo black belt at our jujitsu that rolls with us, and when you pull a sleeve, when you pull the collar, you pull the neck, right? You get that response. And I guess something that's interesting that it sounds like from your journey, Chuck, is that you there are some people who go through D&D, we'll use that as an example, or judo, jiu-jitsu, whatever, soccer, that they're only playing the game. They're not doing this deeper level of introspection or reflection, right? Other people that are playing D&D, that, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
How is that something that's just characteristic of you that
Well,
you,
I'm sure it's like, but I don't think I'm unique. I mean, I think like any of the good quote unquote dungeon masters or people that are trying to lead and have a group come together, a team work, right? Of distinct individuals that necessarily do not want to work together, and you get them to do that in a fun and playful way. I mean, that's leadership, that's EQ, that's but like you said, it could be done anything. But even you did jujitsu and I did judo and stuff. But I mean, even that is one-on-one, right? It's so when I did Wing Chun, I remember one of my belt levels, I guess is what you call it. We didn't have belts, but it was multiple tackers. Now that adds a completely different, talk about that feedback, but then you're looking at the social dynamics, the distances, and now you're having to multitask in a way that is much different than a one-on-one fight, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and even and the goal is right. The goal is, can you, which takes a tremendous amount of EQ, I think, is can you completely avoid? Can you talk it down? Can you bring down the level of intensity, of emotional intensity that maybe somebody is bringing to you in that conflict? Can you, because for me, what I would used to do is, if someone went to an emotional 10, I would immediately go with him. Right.
I see that.
Right. And so pre EQ, right, I would immediately mirror and match their
Yeah.
emotional state, which obviously is zero emotional control. I had zero emotional management, self-management skills. And now, and again, jujitsu has been a great vehicle for that. When I get a white belt, we call it the white belt spaz, they come in all intense and aggressive and everything. I stay completely calm.
Yeah.
And so, from an emotional standpoint, how can somebody in your years of your practice and medical field and stuff, how can one begin growing and working on and improving their emotional health, their emotional intelligence?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's tons of different books out there, but I probably, I mean, that might be something to kind of get the definition, but how much vicariously can we learn? Let's just take jujitsu. If you read a book about jujitsu, could you be a black belt? Doubtful, right?
Right.
I'm sorry, YouTube is not going to help you with this, but it can give you the language, right? It can give you a context. It can start to build that framework for you. So if somebody's starting from nothing, that's kind of where I do. And then I think the best way would probably be mentorship and coaching, right? Mentorship and coaching is really, I mean, if anything we did right in the military, some of it wasn't coaching, some of it was kicking the ass, but that's a form of coaching. But really, is that mentorship and coaching, and really kind of developing and having somebody invest and hold you accountable, right? That's already been there and already done that.
Yes, absolutely. So that's great. Uh, that's great, man. But so let me throw this into the discussion here. So that's something that I've been super passionate about. Not just, not only do I love, coaching and mentoring people, but I also love pursuing it. I love learning, and so I love asking and finding other people to coach and mentor me in an area that I'm not super developed in, or maybe I'm developed and I want more development or whatever. But what I have observed is EQ impacts someone's ability not only to coach and mentor, but also to receive coaching and mentorship.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
How have you seen EQ impact effective coaching and mentoring relationships?
Well, I mean, so I'll start with the funny psychiatry adage, right? How many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb?
I don't know.
One, but the light bulb's got to want to change. Okay, so if and come on, I know you know this too with the leadership, right? The mentor and the mentee have to kind of pick each other, right? It cannot be one-sided. It has to be something that's mutual. And so there is something that has to connect them, and a desire and an openness. So if one is blocked off, it's the mentor has, too many mentees, right? And he just doesn't have time. Well, that he's kind of shut off, right? Versus the person looking for mentorship, if they are really blocked, they're like, I only want, a big burly guy that does jujitsu. Well, I mean, that's you're going to be looking for you all day long, but maybe not other people like me, right? So you kind of just wonder, and you meet a person where they're at. I think that if you really get to the sage amount and you have that coach or mentor, that kind of recognizes those pitfalls and those obstacles. And so in psych terms, we call them defense mechanisms. And so when you see their defense mechanisms start to come up, and then you can engage in those, right? And hopefully that's a part of the development too, right? I mean, come on, think about what drill sergeants did, or the upperclassmen, right? They it was us versus them. So we were all come together to try to, outsmart them, outwit them, or, not get in trouble, right? or take away the pain. But it gave us an object, right, to kind of focus on. And so a good mentor, I think, would notice those defense mechanisms and be able to still leverage that person's ability, you know.
That's great. What are some common defense mechanisms?
How far do you want to go into this? So, I mean, the most common one, especially let's just say for guys, right, and for most people, it's going to be denial, right? It's going to be denial that there is not a problem, that, you know, and denial and externalization go hand in hand, right? So somebody who externalizes, they're in their bad place. They don't have the emotional intelligence to understand that really they are the singular, connective tissue of all of their bad, poor life choices and other kind of circumstance, versus, hey, this is my part that I have to play in this. So denial and externalization seems to be the two biggest types, right? But there's tons of others. We also intellectualize, we rationalize, we suppress, we repress. There's things called reaction formation. There's projection. There's projective identification. So how far do you?
Okay, awesome.
I can keep going. I mean,
that's right, that's
I don't know if you want me to lecture or.
Love it.
Okay.
So where does denial come from?
Protection of ego, protection of self. If you're trying to protect yourself and there is stimuli coming either internally or externally, what do we have to do? It's too painful. It's too shameful. Shame is one of the biggest things that people fight against, right? Whether, hey, I'm a loser, I'm not a loser, or I got rejected for this, and this. So shame is a huge motivator. But it's to protect my sense of self, whether it's brittle, whether it's confident, whatever it is, I'm trying to protect it.
Where does our sense of self come from?
Oh, wow. It's going to have to be a longer lecture, man. So then, then it goes, you're talking about so many different kind of theorists on what they think, right? Freud was drive theory. Jung was more of the social dynamics, kind of like we're talking about, in the interpersonal connections. I really like Margaret Mahler and Melanie Klein, their object relations, right? And so there's, how do we form who we are? And the most lay term is nature and nurture, right? And so those two aspects, we're going to have both an internal cues and then the external, and then those interactions that happened, So this is why, twin adoption studies, right? They're really great. When you have the same genetic material go to two different environments. And this is some of the best studies for like mental illness and alcoholism. Alcoholism is actually the highest probably preponderance of conjoined, or not conjoined. That would be bad. Conjoined twins don't really leave, but no, of identical twins.
Got it. Wow, fascinating. So if we feel like something is potentially threatening our idea of self, then that's where our denial is like a survival mechanism that we kick in.
Or a defense mechanism. So it might be a little bit different. Some people, like you said, when you mirrored, right? And so that might be mirroring, but what you really described was projective identification. They were projecting something, you identified with it, and then acted on it. So actually what you described, in psych terms at least, the defense mechanism is called projective identification.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a very successful entrepreneur. You've got lots of clinics out there. You have served probably thousands of patients and clients over the years. What are some things that you have learned about people from all the people that you have served?
I think that people basically they want a sense of purpose, right? They want to be recognized and validated, and respected. And I think people basically are good. I mean, there's more good in the world, and there's more good in people than I think that they realize, you know. And I mean, I've worked at 3 forensic hospitals and taken care of some very sinful, badful people, right? But there is an aspect. It's almost like a little bit of a Star Wars analogy, right? I mean, there's not you're not like 100% evil. There's even Darth Vader wasn't 100%. There is still a sliver. How do you enact that, augment that, and try to kind of raise it? I mean, it's the true path of redemption and what Christ does for us, right? I mean, so if you look about him, we probably even look like less than a sliver of good, right? So, you know, I mean, in that sense, how would you be Christ-like? Well, you look for that.
Got it. Is there okay? That's a great thought there. How do we develop our ability to look for the good versus the bad in people, in life, in every day?
Goes back to first self-awareness, right? This is the biases that we bring into things. And you know, I think Gandhi had the line, right? It's like, be the change that you want to see in others, right? And so first thing is know who you are, and then what is it about that you want to change? The more that you are positive, the more that you do have a positive outlook and you're looking for the good, the more you'll see it. you know um, I think when you really hold on to that conflict and that bitterness, it is very easy when the world has given you a bad pill, right? It's very easy to swallow that and have it just manifest and infest the rest of your life. And so, we call it rose colored glasses, right? Or that's the positive, right? But it's also blinders, right? So it could be dark glasses. The Where most of these theorists or philosophers or psychiatrists, psychologists, if you really think about the allegory of the cave with Socrates, right? So I don't know if your listeners or you remember that at all, but
Go
just
ahead and explain
very,
it.
and I can't remember everything, right? But I think the theme in the sense is if you lived your whole life in a cave, chained, right? All you saw was the shadows on the wall. How would you ever describe the sun? And so, I tell this to the med students and residents and PA and nurse practitioner students that I see, in the sense of, if you start to learn about that and understand that this person doesn't know what that positivity is, and you start to get them to experience those breadcrumbs that you lay for them, then and let them discover it for themselves, they'll turn around and be able to explain the sun, to you, because they'll feel that warmth for the first time on their skin, and then hopefully they'll open their eyes one day.
Wow, that's powerful. Powerful. Something that made me think of is so especially in my pre EQ days, but I mean, even still, it still happens to me. So it's because I'm still very much on my EQ growth journey, very intentionally.
Me too.
Yeah, I think most of us, right, is, or at least we should be. Not that we all are, but I think it's an ever growing thing. Um, is what I've noticed is when I get emotionally triggered or emotionally hijacked,
Mhm.
dude, my ability to see anything than that emotion that is taking me over is slim, right? I get total tunnel vision. So your analogy that you said, if you take the bad pill, so to speak, uh, when I get emotionally hijacked and emotionally triggered, man, my ability even process, my ability to, when if I allow myself to go to that full 10 emotional 10, it's almost like I almost feel like, and this is probably a reflection of where my EQ is at, that it's clearly not as developed as it could, should, can be. I almost feel like if my emotional hijacking goes to the full 10, it's almost like I have to ride that emotional wave until it starts to subside, because I don't have the skills yet to to actively, in the moment, intentionally get off of that wave and look at it from an outsider's perspective.
Yeah,
How?
so some of that is cognitive behavioral therapy. It's called automatic thoughts, and those automatic thoughts lead to a certain cascade of not only emotions, but then sometimes actions, right? And so to understand what those triggers or automatic thoughts are, and the better that you get to understand them, and really if that's working systematically on self-awareness, then you can actually do a preemptive, right? And so then you can actually work on, so in psych, we also call it countertransference, right? So do you understand what transference is?
No,
You've heard the term, though, of course, right?
I've heard of it, but
Yeah.
yeah, explain.
So when you're in a therapeutic relationship, what you really want, that therapist is a vehicle for that patient to get better, right? And so you have to be as much of a blank slate as possible. So also to listen for your readers out there, if you know more about your therapist's lives than they know about yours, find a new therapist, all right? That's not a blank slate, right? That's either a bullshit session or they should be paying you or something. But
Right.
so to be that blank slate and to be that vehicle for them, they are going to have to at some point transfer some of their pain and anguish. Let's just, for an analogy, they have problems with their father or father figures. Eventually, they are going to act or say things where you might be the object of that conflict, right? The countertransference is the bad, is kind of what you are mentioning in some struggles, and it's very, very common, man. But it's then to act on that transference, right? And this is actually where, like psychiatry in general, or mental health people in general, sometimes if that transference is love or erotic kind of thing, countertransference is you act on that and you forget about doctor-patient relationship, which is a complete ethical no-no, right? And illegal. So, but in that sense, countertransference doesn't have to be that, overt, right? It could simply be that you're bringing in an emotion into that relationship, right? That is going to be destructive. It's going to create conflict. And you have now given over to the witch's brew instead of being able to sit back, have them throw all the eyes of newt into the brew, right? And you're being able to kind of let them stir it themselves, and they can drink it themselves too, but you don't jump in. Jumping in is countertransference.
Got it. Okay.
And I don't know why I thought of the witch's brew. I just pulled that shit out. Sorry, I don't know. I'm not supposed to say. Apologize. You can bleep that out.
It's all right. It's all right. Okay, so what have been some helpful resources either for you personally to grow your EQ, or resources that you recommend for other people to help get emotionally healthier, either books, podcasts, whatever, any kind of resources that are help that you have?
They should listen to your podcast. All right, there's the plug for you. I mean, there's so many books. I mean, I'm not in my, this is my home office. I'm not in my office, but Gabbard comes up. I mean, reading some of the old people, like I said, Margaret Mahler or Freud. I mean, Freud is drive theory. It sometimes can get a little dry. Ericksonian has more of a developmental kind of stuff. Carl Jung is a good one. So there's a lot of these theorists, right? And there's a lot of modern people as well. I think that if somebody is struggling with the self-awareness, the coach and the mentor is probably the best way, versus, recreating the wheel and trying to go back. I mean, finding a book that has more of a synopsis or something specific for you, right? That I think when you make things individual, if you're struggling with anxiety, well, if you're struggling with anger, if your go-to is 10, that's always anger, right? Then, all right, well, how do I get at least a handle on that? Well, focus on the subjects that are just about anger, which, by the way, might be a little drive theory too, right? Drive theory and projection.
Got it.
Yeah, but all of those theorists have something to bring to the table. There's the cool thing is, I think with EQ or even psych, which is why, I mean, I was a flight surgeon before, but that's very linear, right? And internal medicine is very linear. I mean, it's still challenging and it's intellectual, but psych is very dynamic, right? I mean, psych and EQ and people are dynamic. There's so many things can happen. Especially in a moment's time, right? Just like you said, that now changes this trigger now changes the trajectory of what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. That's that's a super interesting. It's so true. It truly, like, that trigger can change the complete canvas of somebody that you're working with. I mean, it can. I know for me personally, again, especially again, mostly pre EQ. I mean, I could be happy, rainbows and unicorns and skittle farts, and then boom, one stimulus, and all of a sudden, like, I turn into Hulk mode, and it's all over. It's really fascinating, the power of this, and so the ability to help somebody. I love that idea of coaching and mentorship too. Being on both sides of it, can be and has been life changing for me when you are able to find that right connection, that right relationship with a coach, counselor, mentor, something like that. How important is emotional health for people's life performance, results, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pivotal. I mean, so when you look at the structure of someone, right, and you can really kind of go into four chairs: a biological aspect, right? And, what we put in our body, what we eat, we're working out, we sleep. I mean, all the biological kind of stuff. The psychological aspect, right? And so, how is our emotional health? How is our sense of self? Are we dealing with trauma? Are we dealing with anger? Right? Where's the psychological and the social? That's huge too. Do you have any friends? What's the environment? Are you in an abusive relationship? Do you like your work? I mean, so that social, and of course, there's the spiritual aspect. I mean, do you have that as a source of strength? Is this a source of conflict? Do you even meditate? I mean, is there any aspect of biopsychosocial spiritual that makes up what somebody is? And it really is not just one. Somebody can eat the best things possible, work out 5 days a week, look like a Roman, little G God, right? And the rest of the three are terrible. Or even just pick three of them, but no spiritual life, right? So would you sit in a three-legged chair? Well, you can balance for a while, but the first time that there's an environmental stimuli that comes in and shakes you, you're going to fall. The more stability is working on all four of those realms in a balanced approach. And if not, then get help in the areas that you need.
Why is it so hard for people to get help in the areas they need?
Because they're in denial. So, well, they're in denial. And, this is, I mean, we've moved to such an individual, right? When you think about the internet and even the COVID stuff, it just really just punished us and isolated us, and fear and anxiety. It's so much hyperbole, mixed in with things that we should be concerned with, right? But still just a lot of hyperbole, right? And so that kind of isolation has made us all individual. And we've been pushing God out of the family. We've been pushing God out of the schools, out of how we even do legislation. I mean, just all of that is kind of really throwing things back to a more of a humanistic kind of aspect. And I kind of tell people that, so my line is, if they, let's just say, I don't like religion or anything. Well, it doesn't have to be religion. Spiritual doesn't necessarily have to be religion. But if you worship another person, if you worship another thing, an object, eventually that will let you down, right? So if it's based on earth, it's going to let you down. You need a well that's deeper than another human, right? Even people like, well, I have my dog. Great. After 7 years, what are you going to do? After the dog dies or something gets hit by a car, eventually, there has to be a well deeper than another human. And if you don't pick something to worship, it will pick you.
That's a super interesting concept. Yeah, man, I could take that. Like, yeah, that's great. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, I want to share. I want to say a couple. So I'm going to say a few of my quotes I say all the time on my podcast, and you tell me if I'm smoking crack or not.
Okay.
All right. Since
I
I'm
do a
talking,
lab test
that's right.
through this medium, but I can write a script and go right
That's,
over.
that's right. So 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 these are a couple of observations that I have gleaned in my 3 to 4 year emotional growth journey so far. One is unaddressed emotional issues don't get better over time. they actually compound.
Sure. And even in a psychodynamic sense, it's called the kindling effect. Okay. And so that's why you should take care of things, early, right? Just like good news or bad news doesn't get better with time. But the kindling effect has showed, especially in trauma, to worsen both the remission and the success rate and the treatment resistance. So yeah. So
Wow.
exactly what
Okay.
you said is it's called kindling effect.
Kindling effect. Okay, great. Okay, the next thing I say a lot is emotionally healthy people help heal other people emotionally.
Well, you're on crack. No, I'm just joking. No, you're exactly right. I mean, that's kind of what I was talking about is when you start to see the good in people, when you have worked on yourself, you have that self-awareness, you're working on your issues, the more good that you will see in other people. And that will elevate other people. That will be it's a force multiplier.
Got it. That's good. Okay, that's good.
You're not on
Uh,
crack. I'm just joking.
okay, good. So far, I'm 2 for 2. That's good.
I got it.
Okay,
I'm good, man.
the next one is, and I got the foundation of this quote from a guy who was on my episode or a podcast episode 59, a guy named Daniel Hagedorn, and so but I expanded it a little bit. So if you don't deal with your emotional issues, your friends, family, and coworkers will be forced to.
Yes, yes, but that's the social, right? And so you're just gotten that one aspect. I would say without that emotional health, it will affect your biological, psychological, social, and spiritual standing and all those things. So what you said is yes, in that one arena, for sure. But if you can't control yourself, I say society will then do it for you.
Yeah, right. Yep. No, that's
So
good. Yeah,
that's the same analogy, right?
yeah. No, that's good. Okay, next one is every day and in every interaction, we're on the receiving end of each other's emotional intelligence or lack thereof.
Of course, yeah. Well, that's the social dynamic, right? That's exactly what I was talking about with the transference and countertransference. It's just a bigger word.
Okay, got it. Got it. Okay, so that's that dynamic of transference. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we have an interplay that's going on, and so, I mean, even deeper than there's a biases and there's automatic thoughts and triggers. When somebody sees you with all your tats, you have not said one word. They have you put into a box, right?
That's right.
If they come and
Absolutely.
see a psychiatrist, they have put me into a box before I have even, they've said one word.
Well, and so okay, so okay, so you use that with the tattoos and with the psychiatrist, but don't we all do that with everybody?
Yeah, it's just what are those? And this is why, I'm very against, oh, America and the world is racist. No, we're not. Nobody is innately racist or something, right? We bring things to the table, or we're taught that, or we're reinforced it, right? So the more the society reinforces that demarcation, the more they are perpetuating it versus a normalization and to desensitize people to it and make it a non-issue. And
You
that
see,
stuff is taught. And so in that same sense, though, that's just the easiest, but all biases, right? I mean, so we have biases, male, female, races, cultures. I mean, we all bring these things, but they're perpetuated, right? They're perpetuated within the cultures and in
yeah,
governments. Governments perpetuate them and mostly just screw up things.
yeah, well, absolutely. Well, and as we're seeing, I think, and not to get political, but to get a little political, and with the media, right? One of the most powerful emotions, and correct me if I'm wrong, like you'd already said, shame is a big, powerful emotion, but I think another one is fear,
Fear is huge. Yeah.
right?
And think about the fear. So here's the thing is like when somebody has PTSD, it's actually pretty easy to treat, right? I mean, there is a specific phobia, right? PTSD, especially, combat, motor vehicle, rape, something like, bad, but it's still there, it's treatable, right? When somebody has general anxiety, so excessive worrying over multiple domains. And so what has this media been doing with the COVID, right? As they have really been doing fear porn, right? They have been pouring down fear on something that people can't connect. They're using masks that don't work. They were not allowing meds that do work, that are not with big pharma. So it's like all of these things, it's like it then becomes, well, what do I treat? Everything is fearful, and it's so oppressive, and it's actually much more difficult when somebody has a general anxiety. It's like, wow, this is going to be a little more difficult.
Oh, interesting. And it's almost like our society and culture and government and media are perpetuating general anxiety, not even specific based on what
Yeah,
you're.
I mean, they say the COVID thing, but then it's never ending, right? Oh, it's Delta, it's Omicron, it's like, wait a second here. Omicron's a cold. So it's never ending, and so somebody's in a perpetual state of fear.
When it's like this is what's happening. It's like the country is getting emotionally hijacked, right? Because when you get again in that state of being emotionally hijacked, physiologically we get dumber, right? Our ability to think cognitively and rationally decreases the more emotionally we get, right?
Yeah,
The more
so it's
emotional
the
we get.
cortisol. So we call it a mild cortical adrenal insufficiency. So when your cortisol, your stress hormone, stays for a long time, you have pro-inflammation, you have more heart attacks, you have more sickness, actually. So it's actually worsening our immune system. You have more inflammation, which causes more pain. So there's more rheumatological, there's more back. I mean, we should not be bathed in cortisol like for a long time.
Wow. Fascinating, but yet that's what's going on. That's amazing. So by getting emotionally healthier, it's like, again, it's from a jujitsu standpoint. When society is coming at you as the aggressive white belt spaz, you can stay calm and not be tossed and swayed by all the stuff, the fear mongering, and all these other things that they're trying to throw at us. You're able to maintain a calmness and not be swayed by all
I
that
would tell
stuff.
people, turn off the mainstream media, go look for yourself. It's out there. Don't go to Google, like do like DuckDuckGo or something, but go to the non-mainstream, go find out information and strengthen yourself, biological, psychological, socially, and spiritual.
Love it, love it. And to think that all those other mediums, right? The big business, the big pharma, the media, the government, to think that there's not an angle, right? There's a quote too that I think, I don't remember who said it, one of the presidents or somebody said it, right? Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
And,
that's Nietzsche, I think.
oh, is that okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and that can also be right. Power can also be a blinding, it seems like it can be very blinding, almost like the fear, right? It's just another flavor of
Well,
of
I mean,
what.
I think there is an aspect of huge. I mean, there's a lot of money, right, involved in this. There's definitely a lot of control. And if you remember Machiavellian, right? Do you remember the prince? So it's better to be feared or loved, right? And in the end, his answer was fear. If you want to rule and conquer people and have them in line, make them fearful.
Wow, yeah, man. Well, Chuck, thank you so much, brother. How if someone wanted to, maybe do you have a website, or how do folks, maybe if they,
Well, yeah, I mean, we have Family Care Center, right? So that's our mental health kind of kind of clinic and stuff. But if somebody is struggling with mental health, if it's an emergency, go to the nearest ER, right? Call 911. But if they're struggling with something that they definitely need that intervention, we do comprehensive outpatient, then yeah, that would be going to our family care center, Colorado Springs, fcsprings.com. Yeah.
fcsprings.com. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Chuck,
That's
thank you so much, brother, for your time, your wisdom, insights.